what's up, folks? Pete 58 here with another episode of Is It Real? Now, this episode is, it's not a creepypasta. It's about an actual accident that happened back in 2008. In California, it's known as the Chatsworth crash. Now, on the afternoon of September 12, 2008, in California's San Fernando Valley, there was a commuter train carrying 225 people. This train had collided with a freight train at over 80 miles an hour, and it was a serious crash. Over 100 people were injured, and 25 were killed. Now, one of the deceased was a 49-year-old Charles E. Peck. He was a customer service agent for Delta Airlines in Salt Lake City. He had come to L.A. for a job interview. Now, his fiancée, Andrea Cates, she was already in L.A., and she had heard about the crash from a news report on the radio. She had been driving to the train station to pick him up. And Peck's parents and siblings, who also lived in L.A., they all got together and went to their house. Now, throughout the afternoon and evening, members of Peck's family, the siblings, the father, the stepmother, the fiancé, they received a total of 35 calls from Peck's cell phone. They would pick it up, but all they would hear, depending on where you heard the story, was either static or just complete silence. In one version of the story, they were yelling into the phone, telling him to hang on and that help was coming. They would try and call back, but the phone would go directly to his voicemail. No one had picked up. Now, the phone calls were giving them hope, and rightfully so. I mean, it was a tragic accident. Although 25 had been killed, there were survivors being pulled out of the wreckage. So they had their fingers crossed, and they were hoping and praying. And they figured that if he was calling, that he must be alive. He's probably just trapped. So they'd already searched that section. He was sitting at the front, and that was the first section of the train that had been searched, and they didn't find him. And for hours, they just kept getting these phone calls, and they just, they were able to finally get the search crew to just go back. They decided that since they were getting so many calls that the cell phone must be working, so they'll track it with the GPS. And they went back to the area they had already searched. And following the signal, they were able to find Peck's body. And it was an hour before they found him when the phone calls had finally stopped. Now, one source says that Charles Peck had died on impact, and that the cell phone had never been found. Now, the saddest part is that the train's engineer was on his cell phone moments before the crash, and it was even later revealed that that was what caused the crash. He had not been paying attention, and he had missed the switch on a train or on the track to put him on another track parallel to the train, and he wasn't paying attention, and they collided. And the more I searched into the story about the phone calls, I uncovered two LA Times stories. The first one talks about just the crash. It was only the day after, and it just basically got the grisly details of all these people being pulled out of the wreckage and the chaos of it all. Everyone was really shocked, even though this hadn't been the first accident they had. That's a whole other story, not related, but apparently this is not something new that they had to go through, and this wasn't the first accident. Now, as I said, the story was covered by the LA Times, and then they covered a follow-up story 5 days later on September 17th. And that's the article that does mention Andrea Katz and her husband, or husband-to-be, Charles E. Peck. That mentioned the mysterious phone calls and using the signal to find the body. However, it's not mentioned whether he died on impact, nor does the Times mention if the alleged cell phone had been lost. Now, I only found I get two or three different versions, one from the LA Times and another from unexplainable.net, and another from snopes.com. Those two are not exactly websites or news sites, so you kind of got to take what they say with a grain of salt. Now, the LA Times, like I said, it mentions that there were phone calls and that they used it to find the body, but they never explained, well, how was the phone calls being made? When did he die? Was he alive? That's just, they don't talk about that, and they didn't seem to follow up on that story specifically, but there were follow-up articles about the crash itself. Now, I think it's possible the cell phone had been found and that possibly Peck didn't die on impact and maybe was able to send out calls if he had a signal while under all the wreckage, of course. It's dirt and metal and God knows what else, so maybe, but maybe not. Now, if he did die on impact, as the one source claims, it's very possible that he could have pocket dialed contacts, or possibly he had lost a phone and maybe wreckage had fallen on it in such a way that it was just malfunctioning the touch screen if he had a smartphone. I mean, there's no mention of what kind of phone it is or how it worked, or if it was a flip phone or anything like that. So it's plausible that he could have maybe pocket dialed it after the accident, or got touched somehow by wreckage, and maybe it hit contacts titled family. It's more plausible to me than a ghost, which is the story that seems to be going around, is that he had died on impact and that he had managed to call all these people over 35 times. Now, another plausible explanation is that maybe the cell phone had malfunctioned from the crash. That seems the most plausible story to me, is that somehow it had malfunctioned. Now, I know these things are built great, but I mean, it was an accident, there's a crash. God only knows what happened to the cell phone if it had never been recovered. Now, I can't say whether or not if it's real or not. I mean, because there's so many reasons for these phone calls to have happened. He may not have died on impact. I'm not sure, how official that is, that they said he died on impact. I don't plan on bothering their family to find out, but I think if he had actually really died on impact and his cell phone had never been found, I think the LA Times may have picked up on that. I just don't see that being ignored completely. I mean, it was only 5 days later when they did their story, but there was nothing about him mentioned again. So, as for these answers, for these questions, I can't answer them. It's a mystery. I mean, the things I gave seem more likely to me. I don't really believe in ghosts, so I don't think, his ghost, was able to, make phone calls. I just don't believe that. I think it's probably something more mechanical, or perhaps pocket dialing. I mean, it's total chaos, and you don't know what these phones can do when they get, banged around too much and that kind of. I mean, I don't know if there was, like I said, I don't know if there was anything was ever found of the phone. They didn't say it in the LA Times article. The one website said they never found it and that he had died on impact. But you can find all the links to all these stories in the description below. Thanks for viewing. I want to congratulate redramblin on 400 subs and the Sonic 1685 on 100 subs. Please spin dash that like and sub button and share, and please leave a comment. Also, my new book, The Time Rippers, is available on Amazon.com. Happy viewing.